Have you ever felt anxious, depressed, hurt, even suicidal at times? Has life ever kicked you so hard that you can't even see hope? Well, here on Wounded for War, I've started this channel because I want to share my real lives. Hurts, pains, anxieties, depressions, PTSD, all of which, while being a Christian, how the biblical truths have interacted, or how Jesus has interacted with each one of those parts of my life. How I've been encouraged, how those big questions in life that we seem to all ask and don't seem to feel like we get good answers to, like, if there's a God, how can there be so much evil in life? How can there be so much wicked or pain and suffering in life? Well, I've walked through those, some of the darker areas of life. And I want to share that with you so that it can bring you hope in your dark time or dark hour. Welcome to Wounded for War. So if you've been following my videos for the last 4 months, you know my focus is on encouraging others that are going through hard circumstances in life. I've shared some of my own past hurts and pains and lessons that I've learned along the way, right? But today's kind of a different scenario. It's definitely a different situation. It's going to be a different kind of episode. And the reason why is because rather than the last 4 months me sharing from a place of past hurts, I get to share today while I'm in the middle of a storm in our life as a family. And so rather than it being just theoretical, we're doing practical application and learning on the fly. How's that? Or putting into practice that which I've already learned and trying to use that to encourage you. Well, the reason why today is going to be different, what kind of storm am I in? Well, before I get there, I want to share something that helps you understand why it's important to share while you're in the midst of life's chaos. You know, I know that this Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday. And, you know, rest assured, there's going to be a ton of people that are armchair quarterbacks, right? You know the type. They are going to be sitting there with their beer in hand. They tell you about how many times they played football and done that play and how they would have done it different, and how basically they got the answers to the solutions to the problems, right? But they're not there in that game, in that moment, when it counts. You know that type. Well, the problem is, we need someone that is there or has been there when it counts. Well, a year ago, to share what story I'm in, what storm I'm in, a year and a half ago, actually, my son was diagnosed with a tumor in his leg. It was a hard time for me and my family. It was difficult, to say the least. It made us question our faith in God. It made us fight with God. It brought us thoughts of losing our son, fear, anxiety, depression. They all became daily battles for my wife and I. And while they removed the tumor from the bone in his leg, they did a bone graft, and they did physical therapy. And, you know, that season of our life, that year in all that process was really hard. Well, about 3 weeks ago, we found out that the tumor's back. This is a tumor that the doctors said wouldn't come back. They said it's more aggressive. So what do you do when this kind of tragedy hits you? in life. When the thing you fear the most hits you square in the eyes. Maybe like me, you tend to want to complain because you feel like no one else cares, like you do at least. Maybe you run through all kinds of emotions, like anger, frustration, fear. Today I want to share with you how I'm dealing and coping with this. With the worst moment in my life. Let's take a look at Philippians chapter 2, verses 14 through 18. By the way, little disclaimer. I've had the flu for the last 3 days, and I did not plan on doing this morning, but sometimes the Lord will prompt you, wake you up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, even when you have a fever and you're sick and want to talk to you. And these are the things that he poured into me to pour out to you. So this isn't some guy doing this brainiac type of study, right? Well, I'm gonna make this package so sweet. No, this is a dad sitting down for the last 2 days, can't do anything. I'm sick as a dog. I can't even be around my son because of this tumor, and I have the flu. I can't even be near him. And so for the last 2 days, I've been just in severe pain myself, but also crying out to God for my son. And out of that, he woke me up on the third day and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And that's where this is coming from. He showed me in Philippians, in the Bible, Philippians 2, 14 through 18. Let's turn there real quick. In that book, there's a man named Paul the Apostle, if you're not familiar with the stories of the Bible. Paul the Apostle is a man who was kind of a take charge guy. He was the type of guy to run headlong into a challenge, okay? But like you and I, he had weaknesses, he had faults. He questioned things in life. He suffered. Most likely, if you know his story, he had PTSD. But in the story, in chapter 2, he's writing from prison. He suffered radically along the way to get here, and now he's here. And the thing is he's writing a letter of encouragement while he's in prison for doing nothing wrong. So let's take a look at this guy and how he would encourage us. 2:14 through 18. It says, "Do all things without grumbling." That's not where I want to start, but it is where he took me. Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain, even if I am poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrifice offering of your faith. I'm glad and rejoice with you all. Likewise, you should also be glad and rejoice with me. This is a guy who starts not with a command, but a posture and a position where he's imprisoned for not doing something that they accuse him of. He's sharing the gospel and good news of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who all the Jews had known of the Messiah. They were waiting for the Messiah, but Jesus didn't come the way that they wanted him to, as a king and a conqueror of Rome. But instead, he came as a humble servant among men. And now Paul, who's been sharing this news and convincing his brothers as much as he can, has been put in prison, and he's been humbled. And he says, don't grumble. How can you make that kind of statement? Well, in my time with the Lord, he showed me that ultimately when we grumble in any way, shape, or form, it's an accusation against God. And why do I say that? Because he claims to be ruler over everything. He claims to be sovereign. That's a Bible word that is mostly used in the Christian realm. And so I'll give you some clarity on that. Basically, it just means there is nothing outside his control. And I know that statement is hard for some of us to receive. Because why does my son even have a tumor? Once, much less twice. Couldn't he stop it? Before I get to that answer, he says in 1 Peter, in the book, another book in the Bible, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. It says this, casting all your cares on him because he cares about you. You know, instead of making the accusation against God, what he says to do is actually that we should cast our fears on him. It says, cast all your cares, but in some translations it says fears and worries. Which leads us to the do. There's the don't grumble. And then he says do what? Hold firm to the word of faith. So we don't grumble. Why? Because we have a place to place our fears, our worries, and our concerns at the feet of Jesus. And then he goes on and he says, but do something. And that's do hold on to the word of life. What does he mean by that? It's a short way of saying, essentially, all the things that Jesus came to do and to teach and the promises that he gave, hold on to that. Hold on to that. He's the only one that defeated death. He's the only one that defeated the curse of death, destruction, everything that Satan offers. He wants to destroy all things. And Jesus came that we might have life and that more abundant. Right? So he's saying, hold on to those promises. It's a short way of saying that. But that's the what again of the statement, what we do, right? We hold on to something. But why can we trust that? Don't you have to question everything? Question everything. Please do. Why is that trustworthy? That's my question. I question everything. Why should we trust it? We can trust it because the next statement that he says after that, he says, casting all your fears or all your cares and worries on him because he cares about you. That's verse 7 of chapter 5 in 1 Peter. But verse 8 through 10 gives a little bit more clarity as to why we could trust him. It says in chapter 5, verses 8 through 10, it says this. Be sober-minded. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of sufferings are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. What does he say? He says there's coming a point where Jesus has already won. You may not see it now, but there is a time where he redeems all things, where everything that looks like he's not in control, he will make sure that you know he is in control if you submit to him. Notice the prerequisite here was that if you do it by faith, right? Firm in your faith, resist him. You know, Paul the Apostle in verse 17, towards the latter part of that, he points back to himself, doesn't he? He says, even if I'm poured out as a drink offering. I like that he put that in, and I'll tell you why. Because in particular, what he's stating is, I'm not an armchair quarterback. I'm telling you that you can make it through this as a victor, and I'm in it with you. I'm not watching, just giving you some advice that I think is going to work, and I've never been in your shoes. No, I'm in your shoes. I'm suffering now. The guy's in prison. I don't know if you know what Roman prison was like, but if you've ever done any history studies on it, oh my gosh. Some of the most brutality ever existing on this planet was birthed out of that era. The torture elements, the beatings and floggings with a cat o' nine tail, the ripping of flesh down to organs. I mean, I don't mean to be grotesque, but I'm just telling you that's the reality. And this guy has endured that and is locked up and facing what he already knows will be imminent death. Why is that important to me? Why should that be important to you? That he points back to himself. Well, the next statement he writes, if Jesus is not true, then I don't think this man could write this next statement. I rejoice and I share my joy with you all. And then he goes and encourages us to do the same for others. For him in particular, but the application applies throughout. Anyone else that needs encouragement. So Paul's saying basically, in so many words, that he's endured a suffering, but he finds joy in his relationship with Christ. He finds joy in the fact that he knows that God's going to turn this around for his good and for God's glory. He finds those promises that were given to him, those things that he saw in Jesus that he's following. Jesus humbled himself even to the point of death, the Bible says. He came down from heaven, gave up his throne, so that he could come here and be abused by us, rejected by us, spit on, hit,
stabbed with a spear, hung on a cross, so that you and I could be saved. So back to my life, my son. I don't have to complain because I have a place to put my cares and my worries at Jesus' feet. Now you might be asking, but what if he doesn't take care of your son? Are you going to be able to say the same things? What if his plan is then, okay, I trust that he's in control, but what if his plan is that he takes your son? How are you going to deal with it then? You see, I think that's where the true Christian reveals their faith. It's in the fire. It's not in the good times. It's in the fire. Where are you trusting? You see, it's been said that an orange, when squeezed, gives what? Orange juice. The juice is the essence of what is the thing, the orange. In the same way, when a Christian is squeezed, if Christ comes out, the image of him is shown through our life. That's what he wants. That's what proves who you really are. Or should I say, whose you really are. I know a lot of people say, well, what if your son's gone someday? What if he chooses to take him home? You know, this might be hard for some of you guys to hear, but the thing is, I've enjoyed 15 wonderful years with my son. There's no replacement for him. I will be brokenhearted. But I'll also be able to get comfort from the one who comforts us with a comfort with which we can comfort others. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 7. That also penned by the very man I speak of, Paul the Apostle. I'm going to leave you with a final thought. Most of you don't like that, by the way. Most of you don't like the idea of, wait, is this guy saying that he'd be okay with his kid dying? You see, when we infuse Christianity into it, you don't like it. If I say that God did it, you don't like it. But let me share it from a different perspective for half a second here. You might be familiar with a movie called Hacksaw Ridge. In that movie, the last name of the guy is Dodds, I believe. And he was a believer in Christ. And this guy wanted to go to war for God and country. But he did not believe in, because the 10 Commandments on the 6th one, it says, thou shalt not kill. Well, that leaves you a little bit in a quandary, right? You don't know what to do with that. Well, he didn't want to kill anybody, but he wanted to serve his God and country. So he wanted to be a medic, but they wouldn't let him. They said, wait, you don't want to carry a gun? So all of a sudden, this starts a battle because of his faith and him wanting to serve his country in a way that they didn't want to. They ridiculed him. They persecuted him. His own, the officers were about to, that were bringing him into the government were ready to throw him in the jail that they had. The other guys that he ended up on the team with ended up wanting to kill him. In the reports of his own men that he was on the field with, oftentimes they wanted to kill him. This guy had it hard. But when the moment needed to count, when the orange was squeezed, what came out? The troops, I don't know if you know this, but Hacksaw Ridge was named Hacksaw Ridge because that ridge was set in such a position where the Japanese had all these hiding spots. It was the perfect spot for them to massacre us as Americans. And so as they came up, it was a bloody battle. All of our guys are just like they thought, going down. And this guy, Dodds, who won't even carry a gun into war, says, I won't leave my brothers behind. While all my company is fleeing, I have 75 brothers down there. I need to get them or they are sure to die. He risked his own flesh and blood, his own life, to save men. You know, it's interesting. We call him a hero today. But when Jesus dies for all of humanity, we call him crazy. At best, a good teacher. Or when his followers say that we're going to sacrifice, you call us crazy. It's only when Jesus is attached that starts to look crazy for some reason. But when someone does it in real life, they're a hero. My son, if God calls him to have cancer and to fight cancer and to give his life fighting it as a Christian so that his friends all see what a Christian walk looks like in the midst of your worst nightmare. And some of them come to know him. And he gets up there early. But they get up there too. He would say it's worth it. Now, I'm not trying to be morbid because I'm absolutely praying for healing. I have a lot of people praying for healing. And I want to say thank you to a lot of people out there. Because as I put a post on, I had a lot of spiritual warfare before this happened. And then we got the diagnosis, and then I got the flu, and still dealing with the flu. It's been a battle. And a lot of people that I posted this about a week and a half ago started flooding in with prayers. And I'm so thankful. So thankful. My family thanks you. We're going to continue in that. So I just ask that you would continue praying for us as a family, that we would be strengthened and that we would walk in God's peace. He says he gives a peace that surpasses understanding. I need that. Where people are flat out saying, hey man, I don't understand how that guy can be so peaceful right now with his kid with, a tumor in the leg. That's what I want. I want the peace of God that surpasses understanding so that people ask and want that too. So, I'll be giving updates on videos. I'll release some pictures of my son and some of the updates of what's going on. Please keep us in your prayers. I thank you. I love you guys.